Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time, this is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
If the election was today, who would you vote for? And how much is it based on facts versus feelings? Because I just have this inkling that so many people are their feelings about the candidates and specifically about Joe Biden is just how they feel about him, which is, I think, how largely we all mostly vote, as much as we want to be rational actors.
We vote with our gut.
And so, simple question that I'm sure many talk show hosts before me have asked so far this year. If the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. And it's also, do you not know? Because that's a valid answer too. And it's probably the right answer because we're still over a year away. And we've touched on this a little bit before as far as what the numbers say versus what approval ratings are, and not even just of Biden, but of people's feelings about the economy, feelings about how the country's doing, and how that matches up to the actual measurements we typically use to gauge how things are going. And I think there's a lot of people on the left or independents who can say, who will say like, yeah, Biden's done a pretty good job, but he's just so old, who are like not fired up about him again.
Right.
And just based on the age thing and some gaffes and stuff like that are kind of like, really? This guy again? And then obviously Republicans are hammering on Joe Biden's America as the land of, violent crime, surging illegal immigration, out of control inflation. But the thing is, like, the actual numbers don't always support that. And I bring this up partially because I read some stuff this morning as far as what the numbers say, but I also over the weekend was up north and went to Lac du Flambeau, and then we also went over to Hayward. So hello, Hayward.
I'm so jealous.
And checked out the Lumberjack World Championship, although we timed it a little poorly because we didn't look at the schedule. So we bought tickets, and like the grounds were open all day, but the actual like final event didn't like start until 5:30.
Oh man.
So we got to see the grounds. We got to see a axe throwing competition. We got to see some fun stuff and kind of get the vibe for what it was. But we didn't decide because it was like an hour and a half from Lac du Flambeau. So we drove back, but got to check out Hayward. Got to see from a distance the largest muskie statue in the world because they close at 4, which was very early.
In the summer?
In the summer and during the Lumberjack World Championship. I was a little surprised that they weren't still letting, because it's $10 a person. I was like, that feels like a lot of money you guys are deciding not to capitalize on.
What, the muskie needs to rest?
I don't know. But so Mike got up in like a hill and got a picture of it because they strategically place a lot of trees. So you can't just take a picture without paying for it. But not surprisingly, in driving up to Lac du Flambeau, driving west to Hayward, driving east back to the cabin, saw a lot of Let's Go Brandon signs. Saw, not surprisingly, to each their own, no judgment, but nevertheless, saw a lot. So one homemade sign that Mike was very excited about. We were driving. He saw there was a homemade sign, literally stopped and pulled a Yui because he wanted to go see what it said. And so it was Biden spelled out. And B was for, I just said this. Didn't I just tell you this before?
You did, and I'm drawing a complete
And now B was for, I was for idiot, D was for dummy, E was for empty, N was for naive, and B was for, it wasn't bonehead. I can't remember what the B was for. If you can think of a B word for an idiot, that's what it was.
Bumbler?
Bumbler? Now I can't remember. But So, anyways, part of the state that is very still pro-Trump, not excited about Biden. So I mention it because I see these numbers, I saw those signs. I kind of feel like the vibe I get in general from, anyone but besides hardcore Democrats is meh on Biden. Like, it's like, I'll vote for him because it's like, again, like a not Republic. It's like, I'm not voting for the Republican.
Right.
But it's interesting because there's a lot of arguments as far as facts of why this has been a pretty good presidency. So, in the first one, the violent crime, and this includes Milwaukee. I saw a headline from last week that violent crime is down in Milwaukee. Stealing cars,
That's still way up there.
Still way up there. But as far as homicides are going down, and this is a violent crime surged across the country post pandemic, and it was a huge concern in the 2022 election. But homicides were down 9% in the first half of this year, and in the over the same period last year. And so that's generally down across the board. Illegal border crossings are down. It's dropped to the lowest level in over 2 years this past June for the first full month under Biden's new restrictive asylum rule, which makes it much harder to attain asylum. Obviously, some people, pro immigration people, are not happy about this. There's a legal case pending that could change that, but at least for now, that policy has curbed illegal border crossings. Inflation is cooling.
And compared to the rest of the world, our
Yeah.
inflation rate is manageable. They're dealing with double digits in many countries.
And so, and we're going to get, I think the Fed this week again is going to make a decision on interest rates. I think it comes this week. I don't know which day.
Wednesday, Thursday,
Wednesday
maybe?
or Thursday. And there's been a manufacturing boom across the country.
Not to mention all the bridge projects.
All the bridge projects, of course. And so there's been like the job growth for manufacturing. There's been 800,000 manufacturing jobs added nationwide. And so it's like you see all this, and it's like, obviously, this is the burden of the campaign to make all these connections and have it resonate with voters. But it's funny that on its face, I don't know if it is right now. What do you think? If you had an election today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. Or similarly, how much do you think that you use facts versus your gut instinct when it comes to voting decisions? 844-96-PARTY. What do you think, Jane?
Well, I know how I would vote.
Today
Yes.
will be Biden.
Yes. And again, I certainly understand the reluctance about his age. He is not a young man. And as you said, he has made some gaffes. At the same time, I think physically, for his age, he's in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I think he's all there and is actually able to put sentences together in a structure that when you read it back, it actually makes sense, as opposed to the front runner for the other party, who is not in great physical shape. And I'm sorry, but they can make as many posters of Donald Trump wearing armor, dressed like a gladiator. That isn't who he is. Sorry to be the one to point that out. I know it's harsh.
Is there anyone running, even if it's a long shot, is there anyone running on the Republican ticket that you could like hold your nose and vote for?
No.
Chris Christie, no.
Chris Christie,
Asa Hutchinson, no.
No.
Like any of the guys who are actually running counter to a Trump mega culture war thing?
no,
Tim Scott?
no. And Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson aren't even going to be players in this.
I know.
They're not. They're just not. And neither is Mike Pence.
Well, Mike Pence seems dead in the water.
Well,
Just because, it's these like, that's how I feel about the Ron DeSantis campaign too, is like, it's this appeal to MAGA It's like, I'm not Trump. Like, it's just this, like, walking this line of not really criticizing Trump because you know you need that base, but like that base probably is never going to leave Trump. So it's like, who are you actually appealing to? Because there's probably, I would think that there's a lot of like independents and moderates who like you're still too extreme for, who are like over the culture war thing and who are not necessarily in favor of teaching middle school students, you know, slavery had some benefits.
Yes, all
But
the
not to go
things you
down that
can
rabbit
all the
hole.
things you can pick up when people are whipping you.
And
But
so
anyway,
that's kind of how I feel about like the Pence thing too. It's like, who are your voters? Like, who are you appealing to? But yeah, I would love to hear from you as far as if the election was today, who would you vote for? And how much, if you're being honest with yourself, is it off of gut instinct versus actually looking at the numbers? 844-967-2789.
we will come back with a call on the other side of this break. We have Don on the line. As Kristen said, if you want to check in, you can text and or call at 844-967-2789.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back in just a minute. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Joe Biden had the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, labor unions. And he still is working on it.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Bad
What
Bear.
a vicious attack on Biden's record so far.
It's obviously, I'm sure you've heard that by now. If you've not, that is a speech that Marjorie Taylor Greene gave. And I think it was in the attempt to list all those things as bad things.
Yes.
Of the socialist Joe Biden and all these things he's doing. But the way it came off to many people is, well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So the Democrats turned it into an ad, which is pretty funny. But I think it goes back to the topic at hand, which is, kind of a conversation about facts over feelings or feelings over facts. And I'm going to put myself like I too, if the election was today, I would vote for Joe Biden. But it's not because if I'm being totally honest, I'm like pumped about Joe Biden. And yet the numbers should prove otherwise. Like things when you pay attention to the news too much feel bad, which I certainly do because that's my job. But when you look at a lot of numbers, things are trending in a good direction.
Yes.
And yet I think there's a lot of independent left-leaning people who are like me, who are like not pumped on Biden. There's certainly a lot of Republicans who are like running on inflation, crime, immigration, that those numbers are trending in ways that don't prove that point. So if the election was today, who would you vote for? We got Don Brown first.
Yes, we do. Good morning, Don. What do you think?
Hi, Jane. Hi, Kristen. The one issue I'd love to put to bed is this whole age thing. I hear so many people saying he's too old. The president should be under 70. And it's like, are we asking the president to build a house or to do construction projects or excavation or anything that requires like physical skill sets and all that? We're not, right? We want someone with a sharp mind, with years of experience, in which he has over 50, with strong relationships with world leaders and other stakeholders around the world. And, how about we just focus on his record? And if we're going to look at the strength of a person, like, look at all the tragedy this guy's had to endure in his personal life. Look at he was a single father for many years before he was remarried. So many things. And I, like yourselves, I was never a huge Joe Biden fan, but when he was vice president, he showed a lot of mettle during the Obama administration and can take credit for a lot of those big wins in the Obama administration. And how come, let's bring that up instead of the age issue. If we're really worried about that, like, then let's dig into health and wellness. Like, Biden's probably in better physical shape than JFK was when he was in the White House, considering all the pain he had to live with. So that's my
that's your take. So you would vote for Joe Biden if the election was today?
As of right now, for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the call, Don. Let's go to Greg. Greg, who would you vote for if the election was today?
Well, I'm looking for that middle ground kind of third party candidate to come, in and do that. Let me just say two things really quickly. I've learned the damage it causes the election when people are one issue voters. Okay, my issue for a while, I'll be honest, I'll admit it, was the whole abortion issue, but then I discovered as I got later in life, pro-life means you're pro all of life, not just baby, killing. But my second thing is, so we can't be a one issue voter. And I'm not going to blame Biden for the inflation issue because, as you mentioned, Kristen, inflation right now is a world problem. So all these people who want to blame Biden for the higher gas prices, first of all, I don't drive, so, but anyway, I don't have to worry about that, I guess, but, higher whatever prices, I guess I can't see that. And so I'm not going to be one issue voter, but I'm not necessarily sold on the two people we have right now.
The two leads. So that would be Trump and Biden. Are there any other Republican candidates that, even if they're polling super low, regardless of polls, that you're like, I could live with this guy or woman with Nikki Haley?
Honestly, if Republicans would stop, and I am a Christian, but if Republicans would stop toting the pro-life evangelical Christian line, and like I said, I am a Christian, I'm probably more pro-life, but I'm not, I don't want to be lumped in as radical, as radical anything,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm looking at, like, and I hate that it's always the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, that is the problem with the two-party system. We're coming up against a break, Greg. So thank you so much for the call. When we come back from our next break, we still got a couple people on the line, so please hold on. But if the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. And if you're being really honest with yourself, is it facts over feelings or feelings over facts when it comes to your gut instinct on who you want to vote for? 844-967-2789. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Well, welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and we're still staying on the topic, but I will say Barbie.
Wow.
$155 million. But we will get to that later in today's segment or later in today's show. But the topic at hand right now is, if the election was today, who would you vote for? 844-967-2789. We had a text on the text line asking if today's show is a rerun. It is not a rerun.
It is not a rerun. Unfortunately, I can't respond to all texts, so I can't tell you that we're live.
But we are live.
We are live.
It is Monday, July 24th. It's 81 degrees in Waukesha, and we are live. So if you were trying to call in, please keep trying to call in. 844-967-2789. And speaking of calling in, Jack from Merrimack, if the election was today, who would you vote for?
Well, there's no question. Given the so-called front runners, I definitely vote for Biden. Let me do a little bit of explanation because I've got a couple things I'd like to say about that. One of those is the first thing that has to happen is the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign has to get their act together. They've got to do things like, for instance, every place where there is broadband cable being installed out in the farming areas, they need to have one of those giant signs that looks like those Biden stickers that you saw on gas pumps saying, "I did this." Every time, every place where there is construction, that is fixing our highways. They need to have a giant sign like that sticker that says, I did this. Every place where there is lead lines being removed, like there were in front of my house just a few months ago, there needs to be a sign that says, which shows Biden pointing to it and saying, I did this.
With the aviators on, right?
You got it.
You should join the campaign team, Jack.
But here's the other half of what I'd like to say. It seems that the elephant in the room, and yes, that is a very bad pun, is that virtually no one is talking about the attempted political coup that occurred with the fraudulent electors. These slates of electors that Johnson and others tried to present as legitimate to the vice president in an attempt to overturn legitimate election results have not even been disavowed by even one single member of the current Republican Party.
Yeah.
They haven't even been discussed in Congress. There are no hearings into it, much less the gerrymandered legislatures like we have in this state. Republicans need to completely repudiate both that attempt using the illegitimate electors as well as the physical violence which they continue to downplay and call things like tourist visits. I can't see how anyone in their right mind could possibly trust anything Republicans do or say until that's done, because that is much more dangerous than the obvious violent January 6th a physical attack on Congress. You can solve that by more police, but this illegal attempt to foist a political insurrection in the guise of being legal is it's something that we can't allow.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for the call, Jack. Going over to Nancy. Nancy, if the election was today, who would you vote for?
Using both facts and feelings, I would definitely go with Biden.
Okay.
The GOP seems to only be the party of no. They have no platform. They have no sense. They just come up with these bizarre ideas that just don't have it. It's for media only.
Yeah.
And that's what gets their base wound up and may tip things in the other direction. A third party vote is a vote against Biden.
For sure.
It's a vote for GOP. I'm ticked off with people that vote third party because, quote unquote, both parties are the same. If you go to a wonderful website called Quora, Quora, and look at Bring Back Democracy and other sites like that, you'll find out just how bad the GOP is. And that's where I've gotten a lot of the facts. It's an international forum.
Yeah, I've heard it. Quora's been around for a while. It's like a place where you can ask questions and it's kind of crowdsourcing of people responding and giving answers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's I'm seriously addicted to it. I admit that.
Good for you. Thanks so much for the call,
Thanks
Nancy.
a lot,
We gotta get one more call in during this segment. And so is it Tom from LA?
Our friend Tom from LA. Good morning, Tom.
Absolutely. Good morning, ladies. First off, we the people ultimately are the government, and we must never forget that. Second is that for the gentleman that called in and talked about pro-life, just because a woman has the right to choose does not mean that she's going to choose to actually terminate a pregnancy. So let's keep that in mind, that this whole thing is about putting women down. Third, I would definitely vote for Joe Biden, because Joe Biden knows how to delegate. Joe Biden knows how to put the people in place that actually, because no president, we aren't a dictatorship in this country. We are democracy. And because of that point, it's what we, the people, want. And Joe Biden has shown that what he can do by putting the people in delegating that power. So therefore, we have the gains that we are having in this administration. I'd like to see him a little bit more like FDR. But I will take what I can get for right now, and that is Joe Biden. So I definitely would vote for Joe Biden. I think we also on the radio shows need to elevate Kamala Harris more, because they're going to be running against Kamala Harris. They're not going to run against Joe Biden, really, because they know that Joe Biden is kind of unbeatable because he's just a good guy. So just watch. The Republicans will start going after Kamala Harris if they haven't already.
And it's interesting to me.
Let's start elevating her.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the call, Tom. And it's interesting to me that they haven't, this whole time, that they haven't done more. That really this whole first term, she's been given unwinnable projects to be her focus, knowing that was, I don't know, just the whole time it seemed like a bad campaign strategy for a second term. If he was always planning to have a second term, is to not lift her up more and give her things that she can win at.
But what did Mike Pence do except stand there and look at Trump adoringly? Mike Pence didn't accomplish anything.
But I also don't think, I think that's a bad comparison, because Trump was always going to be the narcissist in the room. And so it's like in an actual strategic, like, political campaigns, like, I'm not sure that's the standard you want to hold yourself to.
Right.
And so, but I just agree with Tom in that they can't not have her run again, because then it looks like it was a bad choice the first time around.
Right.
But they also just like biffed it, I think, as far as helping make her look good to strengthen the ticket going into a second term.
Well, and I had the opportunity over the weekend. I bought a book by Miles Taylor, who used to be in the Department of Homeland Security. And he was the anonymous author who had that piece in the New York Times while he was still within the Trump administration. And the book is called Blowback. It will blow your mind.
Blowback?
If you think that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are the same intellectually, this will dispel that for you very quickly.
Who's the author?
Miles Taylor.
Miles Taylor.
Miles Taylor, called Blowback.
All right. The author behind the eye-popping CNN #1 New York Times bestseller. All right.
I mean, the amount of times that Donald Trump wanted to shoot the legs out from people who are trying to get into this country, wanted to bomb Mexico, the moat was actually something he asked about.
Is it different than Abbott's moat that he's doing right now with the like spiked buoys?
No, Trump wanted alligators and I think monkeys. So
like the Wicked Witch of the West? Like fly.
I'm not
like
in that.
monkeys?
I'm not in that brain, so I can't specify which monkey. But there are just wacko, terrifying things that I have no problem believing came out of Donald Trump's mouth. None whatsoever. None.
That's how you spent your weekend, reading that book?
Most of yesterday. Every page is like, oh my God. What? Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah. And it's interesting. I listened to Love It or Leave It out of the Crooked podcast, or the Crooked Media podcast empire, that was a bunch of ex-Obama guys. They've been around since 2016, and Love It or Leave It is like their live show comedy. He was like a joke writer for all the speech writing.
Oh, wow.
And so like, it's what I sometimes emulate this show to be, as if we actually had a writing team. But they had this last episode. This is going back to what Nancy said as far as third party stuff, of this whole no labels shenanigans that's happening, and like who's actually behind no labels, and no labels is trying to say like both parties are the same. And so they had like funny but fake PSAs, like, this episode is brought to you by No Labels. And they would argue on like trying to have like the false equivalency of what Republicans are doing versus what Democrats are doing, and what Trump is and what Biden is. And so it was, maybe I'll grab some of those because it's pretty funny. And what happened to the Forward Party? Because that was Andrew Yang's whole thing like a year or
Oh,
so
wow.
ago.
He's
And that's
just
different. No Labels is different than Forward as far as I know.
But I haven't that's the first time I've heard Andrew Yang's name
Since he started. That was last summer.
Yeah.
Because that was last summer when they were talking about.
He's just kind of disappeared.
And so I don't know what happened to them. And the thing that I liked about the Forward Party, besides the fact that they didn't actually have a platform, but what they at least were claiming when they were first talking about having a Forward Party was starting with smaller races. And like, I am the first one to say that the two-party system feels broken. In a two-party system, it feels like all you have to do is make people hate the other party enough that they would never vote for them instead of actually being for anything. And it's a duopoly. And the only people who are benefiting from this are the parties themselves. And I think the strategy of having a third party, but only running in the top ticket of the presidential race every 4 years, instead of actually creating a party where you run. Because this is the problem with two parties is not just at the presidency. This is the problem with so many of our races. I mean, I don't know that I shouldn't know this number off the top of my head. How many elected officials there are in the country that are partisan positions, and having the emphasis be on actually building another option that is viable, that has a platform and gives people, that is filling a void that the two parties that we have right now do not. But why does it always have to start with the presidency? Because that's when it seems like it's just a grift versus something that is real and something that can grow.
We do have one more text that I'd like to get in, if you don't mind, Kristen. John from the Falls, good morning. This would be an easy choice for me. Here's why. My main concerns are climate, gun control, infrastructure, and the economy. The Republican Party as a whole has shown it's not interested in any of the first three things on my list. As far as the economy, America has fared much better than most of the rest of the world coming out of the pandemic. Whether the GOP wants to admit it or not, the numbers don't lie. And by the way, presidents overseeing the economy during the last three financial crises were Reagan, Bush, and Donald Trump. Nice job, fellas. Oh, and by the way, another comment. If you use a slur in your text, then I'm really unlikely to answer your phone call ever. Just so you know.
If you calling us names will not make us to engage with you.
It's not going to help you.
We also have another text from Oshkosh. I think the Biden versus Trump vote is more clear cut than Biden versus any other Republican. Like, if I were to vote for Biden, I would vote for Biden if Trump was the nominee. But if Christie got the nomination, I don't know who I'd vote for right now. So interesting. All right, we got to take another break. When we come back, it's Shark Week. So we're going to play a quiz. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And a wise man once said, live every week like it's Shark Week. Do you know who said that?
I don't.
Tracy Jordan.
Oh.
Well, it actually is Shark Week. It is the 35th year of Shark Week. Shark Week's been around almost as long as I have been alive.
Wow, that's one good way to put it in perspective.
Wild. I can't say I am necessarily someone who has been like a Shark Week aficionado over the years, but it is obviously very, very popular. But it's been criticized for becoming more sensational and for presenting graphic animal violence. And the truth is, shark attacks actually aren't that common. Despite what Jaws told us, despite what the news says, Jane, you're looking skeptical.
I don't discount that. They're the experts, right? They watch the numbers. They know what's going on. But I've been in at least one place where a year later a woman was killed by a shark.
Okay.
And that's enough for me.
For sure. And you don't live on the ocean. So, in Wisconsin, this feels a little less like something we have to worry about because the last time I checked, Lake Michigan, no
sharks. Sharkless.
But I thought it'd be fun. The Washington Post produced a 10 question quiz to reassure you as far as the actual, again, facts over feelings.
I understand.
So we will play this for the rest of the hour. Number 1, of the more than 500 species of sharks, only 3 are responsible for most shark bites. Which of these sharks is not a frequent biter?
Okay.
A white shark, a hammerhead, tiger, or a bull shark?
I will go with the hammerhead.
That is correct.
All right.
Number 2. Where was the shark bite capital of the world last year? Was it Florida, New York, Australia, Cape Cod?
I think it was Florida.
You were correct again.
Wow.
57 last year. 57 people around the world were bitten by sharks in unprovoked bites. Most of those bites, 72%, happened in the United States, and Florida is the international capital of shark bite with 16 unprovoked bites.
Can I just throw in
Another reason to not go to Florida?
Well, there's so many reasons not to go to Florida. Does anyone ever provoke a shark bite? It's like, come on, come over here. I'm going to take you on. Aren't they all kind of unprovoked?
I mean, I guess maybe if you're in like a shark tank and
Well-
you're like,
Fair enough.
well, I mean, you asked.
I
I feel like that is
just-
that is
Again,
a
it seems like
serious answer.
the vast majority of shark bites, no one's going on. Come over here. I want to punch you in the nose.
But I will say, if you think about how many people swim in the ocean every year, to only have 57, that is a very small amount.
Unless you're one of those 57.
Unless you're one of, yes, of course. But there's plenty of things that you drive down Capitol Drive. It's probably more dangerous than getting
Not
bit
anymore,
by
I
a
don't.
shark. All right, number 3. What is the best way to tell if a shark is swimming nearby? Taste the water. If it's salty, there are sharks.
It's always salty.
Number 2, scan the ocean and look for a shark's fin above the water. Number 3, check for notices from the lifeguards on duty. 4, play the baby shark song and see if one shows up.
Those are all terrible.
Those are all terrible. I would say, what do you say? You're taking the
I'll
quiz.
go with the lifeguards.
All right. That is it. Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
That's true. Scientists like to say that if if the water tastes salty, there are sharks swimming in it, which is obvious.
Always.
Yes. It's the notice from lifeguard is the best way to get information. All right, number 4. Which of these places are you least likely to encounter a white shark? Relatively shallow, knee-deep water, shoulder-deep water where you're bobbing over waves, close to seals or school of fish.
Yeah, you don't want to be there.
Don't want to be there.
No,
Far off the coast alongside fishing boats.
you don't want to be there either. Give them to me one more time, please.
So 1, relatively shallow, knee-deep water. 2, shoulder-deep water where you're bobbing over waves. 3, close to seals or schools of fish. 4, far off the coast alongside fishing boats.
I'll go with the first one, the shallow.
That is correct.
Yeah.
White sharks are too big to swim in shallow water, and their prey, stingrays or seals, aren't often swimming there either. All right, halfway through. Which of these statements about sharks is true? 1, some sharks can actually get a tan in the sun. Number 2, sharks can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized pool of water. Number 3, sharks have one set of teeth for life. Number 4, peeing in the ocean or swimming during your period can attract sharks.
I will go with the drop of blood in the Olympic-sized pool.
No, that one's wrong.
It's wrong.
Some sharks can actually get a tan in the sun.
No kidding.
Sharks can suntan.
Do
There
they
you
have
go.
do they have tan marks?
Maybe. Sharks are subject to a number of myths, including that they are these super sniffers,
Yeah.
able to detect scant amounts of blood from open wounds or
That's-
menstruation.
That's not true.
They do have a strong sense of smell, but it's no better than other fish in the sea.
Okay.
Number 6, what can I do to reduce the chance of a shark encounter? 1, stay close to shore. 2, stay in groups, whether you're swimming, surfing, etc. 3, avoid swimming in murky water or at dawn or dusk. 4, all of the above.
I would go with all.
I feel like considering there hasn't been all of the above, that was like a
That's
that was
pretty
an
easy.
easy one. All right, we got to keep plugging. Number 7, are sharks scared of dolphins? Yes or no?
That's always been a myth. So I will say no.
Correct. Contrary to popular belief, dolphins do not ward off sharks.
It was a great story, that they would protect people and dolphins would come racing in to save the day. And yeah, that's just not true.
Which of these water enthusiasts top the list for shark bites? Swimmers, surfers, divers, or boaters?
Surfers.
That is correct. I think it's because they look like a seal. The board from the bottom, they look the most like a seal. 2 more. All right. When a shark bites a human, how many bites does the shark typically take? 1, 2, 3. There's no discernible pattern.
Oh, ew. 1.
I think it's 1 because I think the myth or not the myth, what I've always heard is once they figure out, because like humans actually to them are not that
Tasty.
We're very bony. And so it's like, oh, that's not what I wanted.
Heh,
It's not like
patooey.
they can like, touch us with their fingers. Yes, 1. Shark bites are exceedingly rare, and when they do happen, most bites are single hit and run bites. Final question. If a shark approaches, you should kick and splash to scare the shark away, take a lesson from Batman and spray a shark repellent, swim away as fast as you can, turn and face the shark, then slowly swim away.
That they all sound like death. They all sound like impending doom.
Well, we got to pick one.
All right.
1 is right.
Number 3.
I don't think you think you're gonna swim past a shark?
No, okay, no, I don't want to do that. Stand your ground and back away slowly. That they all sound terrible.
I think that's the right one. Yeah.
Wow.
By turning your attention to the shark, you're telling it that you're aware of its presence and you're not another fish. And if you're holding a surfboard or some flotation device, put it between you and the shark. So there you go. Not that we have to deal with this in Lake Michigan, but if you're going to Florida anytime soon, there you go. All right, we got to take a break for the top of the hour news. We'll be back in a minute.